I just finished watching this interview between Alex O'Connor and Rainn Wilson, or who you may know as Dwight Schrute from The Office. And in this video, Rainn Wilson, I'm going to keep calling him Dwight because that's how I know him, is Dwight Schrute from The Office. In this video, Rainn Wilson explains his views on God, his views on religion, and his spiritual journey to the Bahá'í Faith, which he finds to be the true religion. And I enjoyed the video. There's a lot of good things, but there's a lot of claims that he makes, especially when it comes to Christianity, that I am not a fan of. I think they're misleading. I think they're contradicting and honestly inconsistent. And I'm going to lay it out with using his own words, using teachings from the Bahá'í Faith to illustrate this. So Rainn Wilson begins the interview by speaking about how he grew up in a household that practices the Bahá'í Faith.
I grew up a member of the Bahá'í Faith. And one of the most beautiful things about the Bahá'í Faith is that Baha'is explore all kinds of spiritual paths. So when I grew up a Baha'i, we were studying Buddhism and we were reading the Bhagavad Gita. And we had, born again Christians, come over to our house, and my dad would cook them pancakes and talk to them about the resurrection and what that means and how literal is it and how metaphorical is it.
As he grows up in his late teens and early 20s, he starts having like a spiritual crisis where he's not finding any meaning, any purpose. He's struggling with addiction, with a variety of things. It really forces him to look at the world he's in, look at where he's at, and ask the bigger questions. And so he starts opening books on philosophy, world religion, and basically makes a full circle back into the Bahá'í Faith where he finds that meaning and purpose again.
I found spirituality or a spiritual path to be greatly fulfilling to me on a personal level, and it provided me with some meaning, some hope, a North Star that allowed me to kind of tiptoe out of those dark times. It wasn't a cure-all. It wasn't like, oh, I found God and all of a sudden I'm saved and everything got better. It was not that at all. It was a thread for me to follow kind of out of the darkness.
We should all cheer that on. That is a beautiful thing. But there are some issues that I have, and we'll get into that. But first, let us learn what is the Bahá'í Faith. You may think that the Bahá'í Faith is rooted in Buddhism, but it is not. It is actually rooted in the Muslim faith, and it was founded by a man who called himself Baha'u'llah. Now, Baha'u'llah means glory of God. His actual name is Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri. And this man thought he was a messianic figure that was foretold for centuries. And he's finally here, and he's here to bring the truth. Okay? So if you think of the Muslim faith meeting hippie Jesus and having a little baby, this baby is Baha'u'llah. Let's ask the obvious question. Why does this 19th century figure believe he is the glory of God made manifest? To understand that, we have to dive deeper, because that's what we do on Celestial Quest. We dive deep. We're here to learn. We're on a quest for truth, and I want you to fact check me. If you hear anything that I'm saying ain't legit, just let me know. That's what we do. Okay? Just don't call me out on my Arabic, because my Arabic is trash and I know it's trash. I'm a butcher and slaughter these names and terms left and right. Okay? It's not my place to know that. I'm just here to let you know what I know. And it is definitely not Arabic. Mirza believes he is the glory of God made manifest because he is a follower of an individual called the Bab. B-A-B, not B-O-B. And the Bab just means the gate. But his actual name is Sayyid Ali Muhammad Shirazi. Getting a little better at it. Anyways, if you compare the two teachings, you see how foundational and how influential the Bab is to Baha'u'llah. Both from the 19th century, but interesting thing is the Bab is actually younger than Baha'u'llah. All right, we have this glory of God figure. We have this gate figure. What is this all about? To understand that, we have to take one last huge final step back to the Prophet Muhammad's death. And this will be the last puzzle piece. After that, this will all come together and we can get back to Dwight Schrute, Rainn Wilson, and his perspective on religion. Let's get back to the Prophet Muhammad. Because when you understand this, you're going to understand why there's all these clashes in the Middle East. Why these Muslim groups don't get along with these Muslim groups. It's all rooted in this one moment. 632 AD, when Muhammad dies, you have two groups basically fighting over who's going to be the successor of Muhammad. You have this Abu Bakr guy getting put forward, and you have this Ali Talib guy getting put forward. There's a huge conflict that takes place because they're all fighting over who's going to be the successor, or who's the true successor of Muhammad. Now, we're going to focus on the Shia side because that's the Iranian side, that's Persia, that's where these two fellas rise up out of. You got the Sunni group that's behind Abu Bakr, and you got the Shia group that's behind Talib. The Shia group believes that Talib is a true successor. Talib is an imam, a leader, a guider, and when he dies, he's gonna have a new imam that replaces him. So the Prophet Muhammad dies. His successor is an imam, a leader, right? And then when Talib, that imam, dies, he has a successor. And when he dies, he has a successor. If you follow that all the way down to the 12th successor of Muhammad, the 12th imam, pay attention because this is what the Bab and Baha'u'llah are grounded in. So in the 9th century, the 12th imam, whose name is Muhammad al-Mahdi, during the life of the 12th imam, he goes through two stages, the lesser occultation and the greater occultation. The lesser occultation is he remains hidden from the public, and he's only accessible through 4 individuals. These individuals are known as deputies, the 4 deputies, or the 4 gates. The 4 gates. These 4 gates are the only way you have access to him. Well, these gates begin to die. So the first one dies, second one dies, third one dies. Now you only have 1 deputy left, 1 gate left. So this 4th deputy comes out to the public and tells them Muhammad al-Mahdi is going to go into a greater occultation stage, which means he's going to go completely hidden. Nobody's going to have access to him, and he will return as this messianic figure. This is why the Bab says he is who he is, because he's about to introduce us to al-Mahdi. Al-Mahdi's return, the 12th Imam's return. Well, the 12th Imam, Muhammad al-Mahdi, goes into this greater occultation stage, and he just remains hidden. He didn't die. He remains hidden, and he will return as this Messiah figure, and the Shia are awaiting this Messiah's return. And 1,000 years later, Bab arises. Bab comes into the picture, and he's just like, hey guys, I'm him. I'm the gate. I'm the one that's going to make way for this manifestation of God. He's like this John the Baptist figure. The only problem is he makes this big deal about it, and then he ends up dying. He doesn't identify anybody as the manifestation of God. And so what ends up happening? Mirza steps forward right away and he goes, guys, I'm the glory of God. Guys, it's me. It's me, guys. But then you have another problem. Mirza's half-brother steps forward and goes, nah, guys. I'm the one that Bob was talking about. So you already have this conflict, similar to after Muhammad's death, that people are trying to find out who is this person that Bob was talking about. Subizal doesn't have the charisma. So everybody basically falls in line behind Baha'u'llah and says, all right, this is the guy we're getting behind. So let's look at some of Baha'u'llah's teachings. Number 1, progression of revelation. He believed that all religions are basically manifestation of God's truth. So God's using all these different religions, all these different sacred texts to manifest who he is. So they're all playing their part. There's not one that's true. Instead, they're all true. He also believed that in a bunch of these different religions, you have prophecies that speak about him. And he saw himself as the fulfillment of those prophecies. He taught a one world government. He believed that we should establish this one world government that's going to do away with war and establish peace and justice. I wouldn't recommend that, but I'm just saying what he taught. He believed in gender equality, he believed in unity, he believed in, like I said, the truth of all these religions. So in the context of the Muslim faith, you see why it's ascribed this hippie-ish vibe. Well, now that we have a very rough outline of the Baha'i faith, and I truly hope that you got something out of it, now we can get into the meat and potatoes of this interview. So I'm going to just lay out his claims in the video, and we're just going to test them out using basic logic and see how well they fare in the arena of reason. All right, let's take this first claim by the Baha'i faith, the idea of progressive revelation. So basically all religions, all prophets, or these manifestations of God, are not contradicting each other. They're complementary. They're building upon each other to reveal the true God. So the manifestations that happen within Christianity are complementary to those in the Muslim faith, which are complementary to those in the Buddhist faith. And they're all building upon each other to reveal the true God.
If you go way, way back to like Lord Krishna and Abraham, and then you go to like Buddha and Moses and Jesus and Muhammad, the Bahá'í Faith would say that their essential teachings were true and pure and from this holy, sacred, all-powerful source. And these world religions are like chapters of a book, ever being updated with various spiritual messages.
So what's the problem with this? The problem is these different religions have exclusive truth claims to them. They make claims that are obviously contradicting when you put them side by side next to another religion. So for example, if you take Christianity, which teaches that Jesus is divine, he is God incarnate, or in other words, in the flesh, and he is the second person of the Trinity. All right, that's Christianity. That's what Christianity teaches. Okay, what does the Muslim faith teach? The Muslim faith teaches that Jesus is not divine. He is not the Son of God. There is no Trinity. He is just a prophet, a messenger of God. So how can they both be true at the same time? They can't. They are not complementary. They are contradicting. And so this is the type of stuff you want to pay attention to. Let's take another one. Christianity claims that Jesus was crucified and that he died on the cross and that he was buried. And 3 days later, he rose again. What does the Muslim faith teach? The Muslim faith teaches that Jesus was never crucified. Matter of fact, they think somebody else was crucified in Jesus' place. Did Jesus ever die in the Muslim faith? No. God took him up to heaven. So he never experienced crucifixion. He never experienced death in the Muslim faith. In the Christian faith, he did get crucified and he did die and he was buried. How can both those be true at the same time? How are those complementing each other? Now, Alex O'Connor is aware of this issue and he asked Rainn Wilson about this, but Rainn Wilson never answers the question. He actually goes on a 5-minute rant and you can watch the whole thing. And basically what he touches on is, yeah, well, these religions share a lot of truths, which is true. There are truths that they share, but that's not what Alex is asking. Alex is asking, what about the contradicting claims? Rainn Wilson pivots and goes, yeah, but there are truths to them.
The first, I suppose, objection that people are going to bring up to that is the fact that these world religions seem to have contradictory revelations at some point. I mean, what do the Baha'is think about the fact that in Christianity, God is a trinity? In Islam, to see God as a trinity is one of the most foundational sins that you can commit. You know, in Christianity, Jesus dies on the cross and is resurrected, and that's foundational. Muslims don't think that Jesus died on the cross. What do the Baha'is think about, say, the person of Jesus and these doctrinal disputes throughout history?
Yeah, it's a great and important question, and it's a tricky one. You know, I remember listening to a radio show once, and the radio host had brought on a born again Christian and a Muslim and someone else, and he was trying to like, I have a book. I have a couple chapters about this at the end, where I talk about the universality that all religions have. I talk about a higher power, concept of life after death, a power of prayer, transcendence, community, a moral compass, the force of love, increased compassion, service to the poor, a strong sense of purpose. There's more in here. I'm not going to dig around, but that these universalities are what Baha'is would look at.
Rainn Wilson also hits on how, you know, you have a religious founder that reveals this religion, and then the believers, they fail to live that faith, right? And we see that, but that still doesn't answer the question that Alex asked. He asked about these contradicting claims between these religions.
So Baha'is would reject dogmas that grew up out of misguided human administration in the hundreds of years that arise after the creation of, you know, I mean, the Prophet Muhammad himself said that you can't coerce people into belief. But then, you know,
all
within
know
a
that.
generation, we know how that story ends.
Here's another one I have an issue with. This idea of continuous revelation, of these continuous updates that religion we had back then, that was for those people at that time, but we're going to move on to these new religions and we're just going to continuously get these software, quote unquote, software updates. I'll quote them.
That this ever updating, it's like an operating system on your phone.
Right.
It's like when you get, the iPhone 11.3 and the Mountain Sierra update or whatever, it's building on the previous updates.
Christianity doesn't teach that. If you read Hebrews 13:8, it says that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And the truth doesn't get updated. Truth is not updated. Truth is only revealed. And he came and he revealed himself that one time, and he revealed his teachings. And what does he say about his teachings? That though heaven and earth will pass away, his words will never pass away. His words will always remain as is, because he is the word. He is truth, and you cannot change that. You can't update that. It is what it is. Now I'm going to show you Rainn Wilson's theology contradicting his own theology. Listen to this.
And the original word for sin was an ancient Greek term of archery. Did you know this?
Oh, like
So sin is missing the mark.
Missing the mark.
Yeah, like you're doing this and like, oh, I sinned. I didn't hit the bullseye. So sin isn't like this black mark on your soul that's going to damn you to hell for eternity. It's you missed the mark. And guess what? That's what we do all the time.
Okay, so he's saying, hey, sin doesn't really have this effect on you. Sin doesn't really stain your soul. It doesn't really condemn you to hell. Okay, hold that idea, right? Now listen to what he says here.
It's updated so that same idea can like fit into this physical
But you could also say
space.
that we humans just fucked it up, because if we had just followed what Jesus had said, and if we had followed his example, maybe we wouldn't need more updates.
All right, let's take his belief and let's put it into practice. Let's read what Jesus says. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. It is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. You see what I'm saying? So these contradicting words, these contradicting teachings, it just doesn't line up. You can't say sin doesn't affect your soul, but I believe what Jesus says, and what Jesus says is that it does affect your soul. Do you see the problem with that? Like, this is the type of stuff that I take issue with. You want to see another one I have an issue with? Listen to how he explains who, or rather what, Satan is.
One of my favorite stories from the Bahá'í Faith is the son of the founder, Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha. He came to the United States a little over 100 years ago and toured around for about a year. And when he landed, and he was on the front page of the papers, like the Persian prophet has landed, and they have pictures of him. He's got a big beard and a turban and stuff like that. And this journalist said, Abdul Baha, do Baha'is believe in Satan? And Abdul Baha thought about it. And Abdul Baha was like, yes. And they said, oh, how do Baha'is view Satan? And Abdul Baha said, Satan is the insistent self. And I love that so much, because obviously Baha'is don't believe that there's a red devil man with scales and a pitchfork in an evil place, like trying to tempt us.
And so he claims that, oh, it's just the insistent self. It's really the ego that's Satan in us. No, that's not what the New Testament teaches. Remember, Jesus goes into the desert and is tempted by this being for 40 days, eventually telling this being, get behind me, Satan. He's not saying, hey, my insistent self, get behind me. That is not what he's saying. And when he's going around during his ministries, what is he doing for a good portion of it? He's casting out demons. He's not casting out insistent selves. You know, like, you see how silly this gets? There is no physical features of Satan. That's why the New Testament never tries explaining what Satan looks like. I think it's easier to write him off if you downplay it and portray him as this like silly looking creature. And that's what he does. You see, this is a common thing with people when they become educated. They become too educated to the point where they're like, oh, I don't believe in that silly stuff. There was a priest that I used to listen to. His name was Father Karapi. He played a major role in me coming to the faith. Well, he ends up speaking about this, about how the educated just, they write off Satan like, oh, it's a silly idea. But listen to what he says.
I have talked to people, street people, prostitutes, people addicted to all kinds of things. They all believe in the devil. And we sophisticated, educated, pseudo-religious people often don't. Now there are, believe it or not, a number of so-called Catholic theologians who don't believe in those things I just told you about. That guy was not that unusual. They don't believe in these things, but I'll guarantee you every prostitute, every drug addict and alcoholic in the street who's been around a little bit, they believe because they've experienced evil. They've experienced the dark side. It hasn't maybe finished them off yet, but they've rubbed elbows with the devil for quite some time.
There's a lot more I could say, but I think we should just end the video here. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. I ask that you hit the like button, subscribe button, because we're here to learn. We're here to grow. Celestial Quest, baby. Let's go. Thank you for watching. God bless.